Welcome to Gaming Instincts. Today, I'll be reviewing Doom: The Dark Ages, the latest entry in the new modern era of the granddaddy of the FPS games from the 90s known as Doom. The reboot came out back in 2016 and was widely praised and loved. Then, another entry came out titled Doom Eternal, which also turned out to be quite a success. And now, 5 years later, we have Doom: The Dark Ages. Is this latest entry another banger or a brutal disappointment? Do the new combat mechanics live up to the legendary Doom name? And are the demons as fierce and badass as ever, or does the entire game fall short compared to the last two entries? Let's find out. Quick disclaimer, I've completed Doom: The Dark Ages 100%. That includes finding all secrets, collecting every upgrade, and finishing the entire game on ultra violence difficulty during my first playthrough this past week and earning myself a platinum trophy. So please keep that in mind as you watch this review. Also, a massive thanks to Bethesda and Microsoft for providing a review copy for the purpose of this video. I am here to answer all of your burning questions in this full, in-depth review. Be sure to stick around for the entire video to catch my final score, rated on a 10-point scale. Here at Gaming Instincts, our reviews are always honest and unbiased, and we break them down into storyline, gameplay, graphics and art style, audio performance, and of course, a final conclusion with the final verdict. If you're looking for the latest video game reviews and the hottest trending gaming industry news, make sure to visit our website over at gaminginstincts.com and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Without further ado, let's begin. As always, let's start by quickly touching on the storyline of Doom: The Dark Ages before diving into the gameplay and everything else. Believe it or not, the folks over at id Software do care about the universe and lore of the Doom franchise. Doom: The Dark Ages serves as an official prequel to Doom 2016, and throughout your demon-slaying rampage, you'll learn more about the Slayer, formerly known as the Doomguy, than you ever expected. I am not going to dive into heavy spoilers here. This is a review after all, but what I will say is that I was genuinely impressed with how everything was presented. No, you are not getting Naughty Dog or GTA levels of storytelling, performance, or deep character arcs. But for a franchise that's always been about pure demon-slaying action, it absolutely gets the job done. What stood out to me the most is how much the developers actually care about the Doom universe. They've added fresh layers of lore we've never seen in a Doom title before, bringing in eldritch horror elements reminiscent of Bloodborne, Quake, and even World of Warcraft. There are some seriously badass new levels you'll explore that feel more cosmic and alien than anything we've seen before in the series. Honestly, it almost feels like id Software is blending Doom and Quake together, and I think that's a very cool direction. The game takes place in a higher dimension known as Argent-Denur, the homeworld of the Sentinels, a human-like warrior race similar to the people of Earth. Alongside them are the Maker, a non-human extra-dimensional hive-mind species that hail from the realm of Urdak. The Maker were first introduced in the previous game, Doom Eternal, but in the Dark Ages they take on a far more prominent role in the narrative. Oh, and if you haven't noticed yet, the vibe and overall feel of Doom: The Dark Ages is completely different from the previous two entries. That's because this game leans heavily into a more grounded, medieval techno-space theme, blended with cosmic horror, and of course, hell itself, which is absolutely amazing. With the story set up out of the way, let's dive into the nitty-gritty and arguably the most important part of this review, the gameplay. I am not entirely sure where to begin when it comes to the gameplay feel of Doom: The Dark Ages, but let's just say it leans more toward the classic Doom titles from the 90s with a twist, rather than the last two modern entries. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly do I mean by that? After all, in every Doom game, you just aim at demons, pull the trigger, and then go to another room and rinse and repeat, right? And yes, that's true to an extent, especially in the FPS genre. However, Doom 2016 had a slower pace overall and placed a heavy emphasis on glory kill executions to keep the flow going. Meanwhile, Doom Eternal focused heavily on speed and mobility, incorporating lots of platforming while forcing players to strategically strip enemies of their armor and limbs to disable their abilities, followed by glory kills to replenish health and ammo. In Doom: The Dark Ages, things feel very different. Combat is far more grounded this time around, and you'll be relying heavily on your new trusty Soul Shield, arguably one of the best weapons I've ever used in an FPS game to date. The majority of the time, you'll be fighting on flat terrain, much like classic Doom from the 90s, where waves of projectiles come flying at you. Back then, you had to weave and strafe side to side to avoid damage, and Doom: The Dark Ages follows that same core concept. However, now you also have the ability to use your shield to parry incoming attacks. The shield can be used to either block or parry projectiles, but there's a catch. Only green projectiles can be parried, while orange ones must be blocked. Oh, and then there are also white projectiles projectiles later in the game that you have to block. But the difference with them is that they home in on you and track you down. So you cannot just dodge them, you are forced to block. Parrying a green projectile will deflect it back toward the enemy, dealing damage in return. You can also throw your shield at enemies. Since it has a built-in chainsaw, it stuns them for a few seconds and does some damage, giving you the perfect opportunity to blast them up close with your super shotgun or any other weapon of your choice. In addition to firearms, the Slayer now wields melee weapons with full-on combos, a full dedicated upgrade system, and runes that enhance the overall combat experience in a meaningful way. For example, you can use your shield to charge and shield bash demons from a distance, then follow up with devastating melee attacks using a gauntlet, mace, or the dread mace you acquire later in the game. Each melee weapon has its own strengths, some hit harder but come with fewer charges. You can replenish these charges by collecting melee ammo or successfully parrying enemies' attacks and just by playing well. Admittedly, the system felt a bit strange at first, but after a level or two it clicked. Once you get the hang of it, it becomes incredibly fluid and satisfying. It's unlike anything you've ever experienced in a Doom game, and not only does it fit the lore perfectly, but it's also a blast to use. Throughout your demon slaying journey, you'll feel like a Spartan in space fending off hideous creatures as a one-man army. The best way to describe the Slayer in Doom the Dark Ages is to imagine Leonidas from the movie 300, but in a spacesuit, wielding a shield and blasting demons to bits. You are a literal walking tank, capable of taking on overwhelming odds and still coming out victorious. Progression in this game is also handled exceptionally well. Secrets are far more meaningful and rewarding than in previous titles. You'll stumble upon hidden areas filled with gold, rubies, and wraithstones, which you can later spend as special demonic shrines to upgrade your ranged and melee weapons, your shield, and so on. The levels are larger, wider, and much more intricate than before, packed with cleverly placed secrets. I strongly recommend avoiding guides on your first playthrough. Uncovering these hidden areas yourself is a core part of the experience. The majority of upgrade currency is locked behind exploration, making it far more than just a hunt for toys, codex entries, or weapon skins. Now, it would be absolute blasphemy to talk about the gameplay without diving into the arsenal of fun tools we get to use against the endless horde of demons. So let's talk weapons, shall we? Id Software has introduced a range of brand new and exciting weapons that we've never seen in a Doom game before. Sure, a few classics return, like the combat shotgun and the iconic super shotgun, but then there are entirely new additions, like the chain shot and the pulverizer. There are a total of 12 weapons in the game, including the BFG. One interesting change, though it might catch some players off guard, is that many of the weapons can actually transform into an alternate versions, essentially giving you two weapons in one. For example, the standard combat shotgun can switch into the super shotgun just pressing the square button on the PS5 DualSense controller. That said, you won't officially acquire the super shotgun until later in the game. What this system does really well is reduce the time spent scrolling through the weapon wheel, letting you stay focused on the action and spend more time actually fighting demons. So essentially, a single weapon can function as two whole weapons, which I thought was a great quality of life addition. Another example is the grenade launcher, which can later transform into a rocket launcher. They share the same ammo type, but function as entirely different weapons, all with a push of a button. Now let me clarify what I mean by entirely different weapon. No, this isn't just an alternate fire mode. The grenade launcher and rocket launcher are treated as two separate weapons, each with its own upgrade path and separate in-game currency requirements for upgrades. The same applies to the combat shotgun and super shotgun, as well as the rest of the weapons. The best part about all of these weapons is that they each feel unique and serve a distinct purpose, especially once they're fully upgraded. Take the super shotgun for example. It's perfect for close quarter combat against heavy demons with large health pools. You can chain together a shield parry, follow up with a super shotgun, and finish with a melee combo to deal devastating damage to a single target. This kind of approach is ideal for high threat enemies, as opposed to basic mobs like imps or zombies, who are usually stronger in larger numbers, but don't really pose much of a danger by themselves. If your target is surrounded by other annoying enemies, but you still want to focus damage on it while clearing the crowd, then the chain shot is a great choice. This is a brand new weapon introduced in the Dark Ages, and it originates from the Cosmic Realm. Yes, it's a full-on eldritch weapon, making it the first of its kind in the Doom franchise. The chain shot is an incredibly fun weapon to use. You charge it up and fire a heavy-hitting projectile attached to a chain, making it excellent for single target damage. Once upgraded, it becomes even more powerful, releasing an explosive blast on impact that also damages nearby enemies. By now, you are probably starting to see where this is all going. Everything Id Software has crafted for the combat system serves a clear purpose. Their upgrade system complements it beautifully, especially with the addition of unique shield mechanics and melee weapons. You're never forced to rely on just one weapon. In fact, it's quite the opposite. If you're planning to rely solely on the super shotgun for the entirety of the game, you're going to run into some trouble. Thanks to the new combat system, the super shotgun isn't as overpowered as it was in previous centuries. Don't get me wrong, it's still a fantastic weapon and always will be, but now you're encouraged to think strategically and adapt on the fly to deal with deadly hordes of demons as efficiently as possible. And honestly, I really like that. With the core combat system and weapons covered, let's talk about the two other major gameplay additions that Doom the Dark Ages brings to the table. Its software decided to spice things up and break up the usual run-and-gun arcade-style action by introducing two massive game-changing mechanics that Doom has never seen before. Atlan, a towering giant, and Seret, a cybernetic dragon. In several levels, the Slayer gets to pilot a giant mech known as Atlan, a towering war machine built specifically to combat demons, especially the massive titans that reach the height of skyscrapers. These sequences only appear in a few missions, but they offer a refreshing change of pace. The gameplay in these segments is straightforward. You stomp around and punch titans to death using a simple melee combat system mapped to just 3 buttons. R1 and R2 are used for attacking and building up your power meter, while L2 lets you dodge enemy strikes. If you time your dodges correctly, you'll feel the meter even faster, allowing for stronger follow-up attacks. There are also moments where you gain access to a ranged weapon for Atlan, and it pretty much trivializes the entire combat system, making the rest of the level feel super easy. I believe id Software's goal here was to deliver a full-blown, overpowered mech fantasy, not necessarily to challenge the player, and if that was the intention, then mission accomplished. That said, if I'm being completely transparent, I personally would have preferred an extra standard level or something more gameplay rich in place of the Atlan sections. Then there are levels where you get to control Seret, a badass looking cybernetic dragon beast that flies you across the battlefield and can shoot enemies. Personally, I like Seret more than Atlan, mainly because his segments include some light exploration. You can discover hidden landing spots filled with rubies, gold, and ray stones for weapon upgrades. Believe it or not, you won't be doing much combat while raiding Seret, which is rather odd. When you do, it's usually to chase down demonic ships as part of specific optional challenges, and that's pretty much it, and of course the main objectives. The only real use of his combat abilities comes when missions require you to break through tentacles, disable energy shields, or destroy enemy turrets to reach a health ship or access other parts of the city. Seret also utilizes a dodge mechanic, and if you time your dodge perfectly against incoming green colored projectiles, your turret gains a temporary power boost. This lets you deal increased damage and take down enemy shields much faster. The gameplay loop here is pretty straightforward. You're flying around on the dragon, dodging projectiles, gunning down enemies, and then landing to proceed on foot once you reach your next objective. In my opinion, Seret has more potential to be truly something interesting and fun, but the issue is that he feels a bit underused. Honestly, I think the game would have benefited if Atlan didn't exist and instead Seret had more open-ended levels to shine in. That said, I do give id Software credit for stepping outside their comfort zone and trying something completely new and refreshing for the Doom franchise. If I am not mistaken, no previous Doom title has ever featured vehicular segments. You've always been on foot, so it's generally nice to see them experimenting with completely fresh ideas. All I'll say is this: Seret might have worked even better if he were available to the player more often, perhaps as a consistent companion in a fully open world structure. That's not the case with Doom the Dark Ages, but maybe an open world Doom experience is something we'll see in the next era of the franchise, but that's a topic for another day. In a nutshell, I really enjoyed the gameplay of Doom the Dark Ages. The grounded combat where you feel like an insanely powerful spacefaring super soldier with Spartan-like intensity is a fantasy that's executed extremely well. The larger, more open levels with a strong emphasis on exploration also feel great and add meaningful depth to the experience. I am not entirely opposed to Atlan or Seret, and for what it's worth, I think these brand new ideas serve their purpose. Whether or not they stick around in future entries really depends on how the fanbase responds, but credit where it's due, id Software took a risk, and that's worth acknowledging and respecting. With the gameplay and story portion out of the way, let's discuss the overall presentation with its visuals, enemies, and of course the soundtrack, and then proceed with a final verdict score. First, let's talk about the visuals in Doom the Dark Ages. As expected, the game looks fantastic. It runs on the latest version of id Software's in-house engine, id Tech 8. For context, Doom Eternal ran on id Tech 7, and Doom 2016 used id Tech 6. Fun fact, Doom 3, released back in 2004, was powered by id Tech 4, while both Doom 1 and Doom 2 ran on the original id Tech 1. It's genuinely fascinating to see how far this engine has come over the years, and I'm excited to see where id Tech takes us next in the future of the Doom franchise. As far as enemies go, you'll see the return of several fan favorites like the Mancubus, Imps, and Pinky demons, though this time, Pinkies are ridden by mounted demons, which is a cool twist. There's also a new variation of the Caco demon called the Hybrid Caco demon, which is basically a creepy floating brain that honestly reminded me of one of the enemies straight out of Duke Nukem series. Shout out to anyone who remembers of what anime I'm talking about, all the way back from the 90s. The Cyber Demon also returns with some new twists of its own, alongside a handful of brand new enemy types that I'll let you discover for yourself. That said, my only gripe is the lack of more Eldritch style enemies, considering there's a whole set of levels dedicated to the cosmic realm. I was expecting more new horror inspired monsters tied to that theme. It felt a bit off that the game introduces this bizarre otherworldly setting, but doesn't really deliver much in terms of unique enemy variety from it. Maybe it was due to time constraints, or perhaps those creatures are being saved for future DLC or the next title. That said, don't expect a massive visual leap from Doom Eternal to Doom the Dark Ages, and honestly that's perfectly fine. This entry does introduce ray tracing if I'm not mistaken, which brings noticeably improved reflections and lighting. And like its predecessors, it runs at a silky smooth 60 FPS. I am not entirely sure what resolution the game was running at, but on the PS5 Pro it didn't quite look like native 4K or even up-res 4K. Oddly enough, I also couldn't find any additional performance settings in the main menu, which felt a bit strange. Despite all that, the game offers a fantastic variety of environments and themes. The Cosmic Realm in particular is unlike anything you've ever seen in a Doom game. The visual diversity is impressive, and the medieval twist blended with space-age tech and eldritch horror really pushes the art style to the next level. Major kudos to the developers and the art team at id Software for delivering such a striking and memorable visual experience. Last but not least, let's talk about the soundtrack of Doom the Dark Ages. The modern era of Doom is widely recognized for its incredible metal soundtrack, originally composed by Mick Gordon. For those who follow the franchise closely, you already know what happened between Bethesda and Mick Gordon. And I'll be honest here, the music in the Dark Ages just doesn't carry the same vibe or intensity as the previous entries. That's not to say the soundtrack is bad, it's certainly serviceable, but it lacks the distinct, memorable punch that made the music in Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal so iconic, and let's face it, we all know why that is. No one can truly replace Mick Gordon. For the most part, the soundtrack in Doom the Dark Ages comes across as generic heavy rock metal. There aren't any standout, memorable tracks that left a lasting impression on me. Nothing on the level of BFG Division from Doom 2016 or Ultimate from Doom Eternal, especially during the Exultia level. The music feels uniform throughout, lacking the dynamic range and distinct identity that fans have come to expect from the series' iconic soundscape. However, the rest of the sound design is top-notch. The familiar audio cues from previous games are present, and the weapons sound as impactful and as satisfying as ever. It's just unfortunate that the soundtrack doesn't live up to the high standards set by Mick Gordon's previous compositions. While I don't intend to diminish the efforts of the current composer, it's evident that Mick Gordon's unique style is irreplaceable, and Bethesda's decision to part ways with him has left a noticeable void in the game's auditory experience. In conclusion, I had an absolute blast with Doom the Dark Ages. As someone who's been playing the series since the very first game, I generally enjoyed the entry from start to finish. The combat is fast, brutal, and layered, with the emphasis on melee attacks, shield throws, and the dual weapon system adding tons of variety to how you approach every encounter. The level design is excellent, and with 22 levels total, there's a lot of game here. It took me around 25 to 30 hours to complete the campaign on Ultra Violence, find all the secrets, and unlock every upgrade. That said, keep in mind, I am a very experienced FPS player and have been playing shooters since the 90s. Yes, I'm an old gamer, don't remind me. Doom the Dark Ages earns a final score of 9 out of 10. It's easily one of my top 3 games of 2025 so far, simply because I had an absolute blast playing it from start to finish and completing everything it had to offer. That said, this new entry isn't without its flaws. The absence of Mick Gordon is definitely felt, and the lack of additional eldritch Lovecraftian enemies, especially given the Cosmic Realm, felt like a major missed opportunity. The Outland and Surret segments are cool additions, but they come across as experimental ideas than fully fleshed out features that integrate tightly with the rest of the game's design. Overall, Doom the Dark Ages is a worthy addition to the franchise, and I believe both longtime fans and newcomers will find plenty to enjoy, whether it's the expanded lore, rich world building, or the fresh combat mechanics. If you loved the ripping and tearing in Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, you'll absolutely continue to enjoy doing so in Doom the Dark Ages. The best way to summarize Doom the Dark Ages is that it lets you live out the ultimate fantasy of a testosterone-fueled, steroid-pumped gym bro who goes to space and slaughters demons and nothing can stop him. There's truly nothing else like it on the market right now, especially in today's overly sanitized, snowflake-infested gaming pussy-ass landscape. So thank you, Bethesda, for delivering the ultimate male power fantasy we all deserve. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more video game reviews. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, then make sure to hit like and subscribe with notifications turned on. Peace out and happy gaming.